What I'm about to tell you in today's video is something that you are going to need whether you are moving to Italy, already living in Italy, or trying to navigate your way around Italy. Because let me tell you something, if you do not have what I am about to share with you in today's video, at the very least, you will be a doormat. But in the worst case scenario, you may not even move to this country at all. So what is this thing that you need? You need to have boundaries. That's right. Nothing technical, nothing that you need to study for, but you need to have these boundaries because boundaries are something that, in my opinion, are often associated with negative things. People associate boundaries with somebody always saying no, or not being very flexible, or not being very accommodating. But you see, boundaries are essential. So let's talk about the first category. If you plan to move to Italy, here is why you are going to need boundaries. Because no doubt you are going to be met with some people who are a bit of a negative Nancy towards your dream of moving to this country, whether that be people you know, because yes, this can happen. As I've said in other videos, big dreams can sometimes be triggering for those people who have unfulfilled wishes and desires of their own. But not only that, also fellow expats or people who are living here on a long-term basis. You may very well face criticism or negativity from those very people who are living the life that you desire. Because, as I've said in other videos, some people do not adapt very well to life here in Italy, and maybe they haven't set their expectations straight before they move here, or maybe they're unwilling to change or adapt and mold their lives accordingly. And as such, life becomes very difficult for them here in Italy, and they are very quick to want to share that with those of you who plan to move to this country. But boundaries are super important because if you don't have them, you are going to start allowing yourself to be influenced by any negativity that you may face. Boundaries are something that, especially when you plan to move to Italy, help to protect your dream. Because here's the thing. I often say that sometimes it is better to keep things to yourself until you are about to finish what it is that you're working on, or you have the finished product or result, whatever it is that you are doing. Because the problem is when we start talking about our dreams and our desires, we almost invite the unwanted opinions sometimes of those around us. And sometimes when people are very persistent in sharing those opinions with you, it can actually make you start to second guess your decision, whether you really realize it or not. And so this is why having boundaries at this stage is super important to be able to preserve your dream. And boundaries at this stage can mean that you decide to be very selective as to who you talk about your dream with. Maybe you don't discuss it with every single member of your family or every single friend that you have. Maybe it's not something that you decide to talk about in these expat communities because you just know what's going to come next. But you are very selective as to who you share your news with and who you keep updated with the progress of your dream. Boundaries at this stage could also look like you decide to take what people tell you with a pinch of salt. You recognize that some people can just have very negative experiences, maybe because of who they are as a person, but that their story is not necessarily going to be your story here. So you become very selective and discerning as to what you choose to take as advice from people around you and what you choose to let go. These are some ways that you can have boundaries at this very early stage of when you're deciding to move to Italy, because I think it's a very precarious moment because some people are very nervous about such a decision and there is a lot of kind of uncertainty, a lot of unanswered questions at this stage. And so you have to be very, very protective of your desire to move here if you want to really make it a reality. So set those boundaries in place. Start really considering who you're sharing your dreams with, where you're getting your information from, and what information you are going to really hang on to and use to help you, and what information you are going to let go and just pay no attention to. It's super, super important if you really want to make your dream of living in Italy a reality. Let's talk about when you're actually living in Italy. Boundaries become really important. So they become important because when you're making connections with people, when you are setting up your life, you need to start teaching people how to treat you. Now, I always say that everyone is our teacher. Those who criticize us and those who praise us, we can learn from each and every one of them. But I also believe that we also show other people the behavior that we will tolerate and the behavior that we won't tolerate. And that comes through having boundaries, saying no if you don't want to do something, politely declining an offer or a request if it doesn't sit right with you. Like, these are ways that you can demonstrate having boundaries that respect and honor your feelings, but also start to show other people the behavior that you will tolerate and the behavior that you won't. So let me give you a couple of real world examples of when you're actually living here in Italy. So because we're talking about just your life in general here, it could be, for example, the interactions you have with neighbours. Depending on where you live, you may find that some Italian people are very, in a way, intrusive. They want to know the ins and outs of your life. Now, it's not in a malicious way necessarily, but it's just the way that some people can be here, especially in the south of Italy. However, it doesn't always work in the reverse. People ask you 1,000,001 questions, but you don't necessarily know anything about them. And this is the irony of the situation. So your boundary here could be that you decide only to talk about what you feel comfortable talking about, and you don't disclose all and sundry about your life just because you want to fit in. You disclose what you feel comfortable disclosing, because I don't want to say nosy, but in a way I am going to say nosy. Some people here can be really nosy, much the same as in any other country around the world. And so you've got to have your boundaries in place and decide what information you are prepared to share with those people and what information you prefer to keep private. This is teaching other people not to ask you the questions that you are not going to answer, right? Another way that you can navigate kind of life here when you're setting up your life is the way that you manage your bureaucracy. Now, I'm super precise with my bureaucracy, and I've got to be honest with you, I'm feeling really good because today my healthcare card arrived automatically by post to my address. Let me tell you, it was on my list of things to sort out in September because it was due for renewal. It was one of the bureaucracy things that I was starting to fret over, and it was automatically done. I'm feeling so good. But anyway, I'm digressing. However, what I want to say to you is bureaucracy. You've got to have your boundaries when it comes to bureaucracy, right? You are going to go around the houses depending on what you're dealing with. Not everything is as smooth sailing as what I've just described. I've had my fair share of bureaucracy nightmares, especially in Palermo. So you've got to have your boundaries. What behavior are you going to tolerate and what behavior are you not going to tolerate? I'll give you an example from me. As you all know, if you've been watching my channel for some time, I had an absolute nightmare changing my residency in Palermo. So when I left Salerno City and moved to Palermo, I had to wait 6 months for that residency change to take effect. This is a process that should take no more than 40 to 45 days. So it was absolutely absurd, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. And this was me having my boundaries because I didn't accept what they were telling me in the residency office because I knew it's just they didn't know how to process me now that I'm no longer in part of the EU and because of Brexit, and they were sending me to the wrong places and telling me to complete the wrong documents. And at the end I was like, I'm going to make a complaint. I want to speak to the manager. I've given you everything. What on earth is the problem? And it's so funny because at that point, on that same day, my residency was confirmed. And this is it. How are you going to allow people to treat you? Are you going to meekly go away every single time when they tell you, sorry, not today? Or are you going to gather your evidence and be at the point where you're like, excuse me, I'm not an idiot. I have everything here. What are you going to do? Because I'll tell you something that I'm starting to notice, and I'm seeing this in expat comments as well from other people who are dealing with bureaucracy matters. The minute you stand up for yourself and you have your boundaries and you are very clear as to the behavior you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate, people suddenly sit up and respect you. And they suddenly start taking action that if you were really meek and you didn't say anything and you became a doormat, they would never have bothered to do. And this is why I stress about boundaries so much, because they are so important. I really believe that people respect you more when you have boundaries, which leads into the third category of kind of navigating your everyday life here, okay? So let's talk about work. Work is one area where 100% you need to have boundaries. Like, I want to say I'm a flexible person. I'm an adaptable person, let's put it there, because I can be a bit rigid sometimes in my routines and things like this. But I am adaptable. I'm open to change. However, I'm not a doormat. And if people ask things of me that I know are outside of my remit or outside of what I should be doing, I'm not likely to say yes unless I really believe that it's something that I want to do, because I'm showing people how to treat me. I've seen too many people be like the yes person. Yes, 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 yes. And then they wonder why people take advantage of them and they're suddenly swamped with work, don't have a day off for weeks and are exhausted. Well, you kind of invited that upon yourself by not learning how to say no. Within the working world here, you definitely need to have boundaries, but having boundaries doesn't mean that you have to be disrespectful. And this is the thing, people get it twisted. They associate having boundaries with somebody who is rude. It's not this. I have boundaries within my workplace, but I am the most respectful and professional person you could ever meet. And I will never change that aspect of myself, but I am also very clear as to what I will do and what I won't do. And I actually think I have the respect of people because of this, and I have seen how other people necessarily are not as respected as they think they are because they don't know how to have these boundaries. So it's this, have boundaries if you plan to move to Italy, settle into your life here and navigate everyday life. It's super important. Remember, every action you take, every time you have a conversation with somebody, every time you are interacting in whatever way, you are teaching people how to treat you. And I guess the question that I want to close this video with is, what are you teaching people when it comes to how to treat you? And secondly, linked into this, what are you going to do to protect your dream of moving to Italy and your life here in Italy? Because boundaries are so important. If you've enjoyed this video, this is the video that I think you're going to enjoy next, because I talk about some other aspects that you absolutely must understand and kind of have a good grasp of if you plan to settle fully into life here in Italy. I will see you in the next video.